أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني ويفقهوا قولي. Welcome to everyone in our July book club session. This is our last session in summer. Inshallah, we'll take a month break after this July summer session for the holiday season. Alhamdulillah, for today, our today's guest is Brother Motiur. Motiur Bhai is a student of philosophy. He studied philosophy in universities and then studied further education on education itself. And inshallah, he will share with us today one of the greatest scholar of golden time of Islam, Abu Zaid Al-Balkhi. He's famously known as just Al-Balkhi, and the book is Sustenance of the Soul. Inshallah, we will hear some timeless wisdom from this book, and inshallah, Brother Motiur Bhai will share us a review, and following that, we'll have a short question and answer session and discussion as well. So without any further delay, I will hand over to Motiur Bhai. Motiur Bhai, is to you. Please feel free to share presentation and just for timing, shall I give you a reminder after half an hour or 40 minutes? You are on mute, Motiur Bhai.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yeah, half an hour would be good. Yeah, just if you interact in between now and then. I think I'm in a mood today. Just want to make it chatty and conversational. It will help me out. So do chip in at times, or as well as our brothers and sisters on these sort of audiences will be quite nice. So, yeah, if you're ready, then we can start.
Inshallah.
You can
Go
see
on.
the
Yeah.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم صلى الله عليه وسلم مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. So this book, Sustenance of the Soul, is quite interesting. This goes back quite a while. So let's start from the beginning.
Motiur Bhai, is it in front of your presentation? There is a feedback.
Oh, yeah. So you
Microsoft.
can see the whole thing.
Yeah. If you
How
just
do I
click cancel, that will go probably.
and then get the so you can see all right. So now you can see the
Now
screen.
it's all, we see the whole
Oh,
page. Yeah.
right. Thank you. So and let's move that away. So Abu Zaid was cognitive behavior therapy of a 9th century physician. So 9th century is like 800s, and we're in 2024. So that's 1200 years ago. So Alhamdulillah, when I first came to hear of him, I was researching on sort of Muslim psychology, and then I came across his name first, and then mashallah, a few scholars have recently picked it up. So that's how we know of the book. So let's start. Am I going to go? Right. So first thing I want to do, just to give a bit of context of history of development of mental health. So in the ancient era, people thought disorders, mental health issues were linked to mysticism, supernatural causes, genes, spirits, and the way to sort of treat these diseases or illnesses, they were thinking of drilling holes in the skull to release evil spirits, casting out the India, you had Ayurvedic balancing of bodily fluids. And that's something I found out. Even Golden Age scholars, they were talking about four humors. Black bile, yellow bile, blood, and something else. And basically they thought good health consistent having a balance of these four humors. And if you read the whole of the book of Al-Balkhi, you'll see he also mentions that. So that was something that was given at his time. So ancient era, then we move to medieval Renaissance era. Um, Scientific reason was declined. They didn't want to have any science to explain it. It was seen more as magic, witchcraft, demonic possessions, jinns, and what they would do. Anyone suffering from mental illness, they'd put them in prisons, workhouses, asylums, under tough conditions. So you chain them up, and that's how you deal with people with mental health. Then in the 18th and 19th century, you had people in reformers, Philippi Pinel and Dorothy Dix in the US. They wanted more of a moral treatment, um, sort of have them in some sort of care under better conditions. So they were thinking about humane conditions. And then that went for, well, this was the case for thousands of years till 20th century, which is 1900s. So Freud's writing came in probably like 1920 when Freud's theories were coming into circulation among students. So later in the 20th century, maybe 1950s, you had the antipsychotic medicines, you deinstitutionalized them, closed the asylums, and you put them into community care. And that's what we do even now for mental health. You'll have home-based community care. And today, the field integrates biological. So, the reasons nowadays to explain mental health, they talk about biological reasons, psychological, family factors, social factors, and they talk about proactive mental health hygiene, how to sort of prevent these mental healths. They talk about human rights and early intervention. So to treat it first before it sort of escalates into big problems. So this is the 20th century. Now going back, so if you just focus on the contemporary perspectives today, um, how we treat with it, and now go 1200 years back. Um, right, let's move on to that. So at the time of Balki, he was born 850 Christian era in a city called Balkh. So during the Islamic heydays, Balkh was one of the big cities in sort of the eastern part, like Bukhara and Balkh. There was a Urdu saying, something like, wherever you may go, Balkh or Bukhara there's nothing like home. So Balkh in the sayings of last 100 years was a big city. Um, there is one interesting person, Al-Kindi. So I've never actually yet read any direct work of Al-Kindi. He came from the Kindi tribe, descendant of one of the Sahaba of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. May Allah be pleased with them. And so he was a pioneer, worked under the Abbasids, and he was one of the founders of Darul Hikmah. So basically, he had this personal energy, zeal to translate Greek work, ancient work, foreign work, get into Arabic, reevaluate it, build on it, and develop on it. So his student is Al-Balkhi. So Al-Kindi is very famous. You'd hear his name as he's like the founding philosopher of the Muslim world. So Sahal, right, when Sahal worked, studied in sort of Baghdad under Al-Kindi for about 8 years, I think. So he went back and forth a few times. So when he came back, the local ruler of Balkh, whose name was Ahmad ibn Sahal, offered him two positions. One, to be an administrator, like Qazi or judge or something, to work as in an official post for the government. And the other one was to be sort of an educator, researcher. So he declined the official political post and decided that he would accept the sort of teaching position, research position founded by the Prince Ahmad ibn Sahel. So he not only did mental health, Al-Balkhi was a master of geography, mathematics, major geographical work. He made a map called Suwar al-Aqalim, Figures of the Climates, and it was a highly detailed cartographic map and established the Al-Balkhi school at that time for terrestrial mapping. So, unless you know which place is where, you can't really trade, you can't really go there, you can't. So it's really important then mapping. Additionally, he wrote books on mathematics, philosophy, political science, and also from this book, he's made groundbreaking contributions to psychology, medicine, geography, as we mentioned. It is said he wrote about 60 works or over. Many might be lost. So that's Al-Balkhi. So he talks about why, sort of introduces what is mental health and what is good health, and why he is writing this book. So he talks about men as a person is composed of a body and a soul, and is bound to face from each part. So he has issues from the body at times, he has issues from the soul at times. So there's health and sickness, and it could affect people in a negative way. So symptoms that affect the body and upsets its well-being are those as like bodily things like a fever, headache, temperature, tummy aches, pains that affect the organ. And psychological symptoms he talks about are anger. If you get really angry, sorrow, fear, you panic, and so on. Other similar manifestations as well. So he says, and if we really reflect on that, that statement, the third point is very true. Psychological symptoms affect a person much more frequently than bodily symptoms. And how true it is. You might really have a temperature once or twice a year, but if you think about your moods on a daily basis, you're happy at times, you're sad at times, you're angry at times, you're fearful at times. So, in that sense, he's absolutely right. Psychological symptoms affect us much more than the bodily ones. And then he talks about predisposition. So, this is the genetic thing. Um, some people can tolerate high problems, difficulties, and can carry on with it. Other people, they find it difficult. So he talks about different people and their sort of innate dispositions towards that. So he's talking about biological issues as well. When the body becomes ill, he says in the last point, is in pain and subjected to harmful things, it will prevent with strong disposition from proper understanding and learning. So when the body is ill, you can't do your mental things, you can't think clearly. And so you're not actually focused or thinking straight. And same vice versa. When the soul is afflicted, you still can't do the bodily things. Your body might shut down. You will not have the good mood. You'll feel lethargic, and so your life becomes distressed. In both, sort of, in the first part of the slides, I've used the exact translation from his book, so you get a bit of flavor, the language he talks and how he talks in his book. So this is direct sort of, instead of me changing the words, most of the first part of the presentation is as he says it. So that's why he's explained why we need to preserve our mental health.
Motiur bhai,
Mhm.
can I interrupt on the spirit of since you asked to interrupt you?
Yeah,
What you
yeah.
just said is quite surprised me. So when you said that you kind of copied a bit verbatim as it is verbatim, sorry for my pronunciation.
Yeah.
Um, I'm quite surprised that he used all these advanced words in the last slide. If you go the previous slide.
Oops. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, this he's dividing psychological symptoms and bodily symptoms by body and soul. So, like quite advanced. Um,
Fascinating, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
And the other thing to remember, so he is the pioneer. There's nothing before him. And he says that in his books. I'm writing that, but there's nothing before me. And look, the first person who writes it and writes it in this language and in this detail, 1200 years ago. So bear
Yeah.
that in mind. That is
It
fascinating.
it really give me a goosebump because it's the clarity of language. Because I thought
Yeah.
that's kind of translated or interpreted, but when you said it is, you copied like again my
Mm.
pronunciation verbatim from what he said, or a direct translation. Is quite streamlined, and
Amazing.
it's really amazing to see that.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. So,
Sorry to, yeah, please go on.
yeah. So it talks about when the soul is healthy, all its by soul, the Muslims always mean the mind. All its faculties will be tranquil without any psychological symptoms, no anger, state of peace, no depression. So he says, how do we then preserve our health? And he says two ways, either external or internal. So externally, we protect ourselves from heat, cold, calamities, the roof falling down, food, and all these things. Um, and internal things is thinking about the four humors, the black bile, the yellow bile, the blood, and there's something else I should have actually read up. So these four humors has to be in balance. Um, so also he talks about how do you externally to protect the soul from outside elements, what a person hears. So, like when we tell our children, we don't tell our children ghost stories in the night because they'll really get disturbed. They can't sleep. So protect yourself from hearing things, seeing things. Maybe these days social media with horrible incidents of robberies or something, and then you say, "Oh my God, this is happening. My house might be next." Um, so it's talking about that. Internally means to protect the soul from internal symptoms of negative thinking. So if you're pessimist that nothing good will happen, I won't get this job, this will cause great anxiety. Yeah. So one can heal oneself using two methods. First, when feeling peaceful, and your mind is in a tranquil state, one should be convinced that the heart, this dunya is problematic. You're going to have good, you're going to have bad. Um, so be prepared, prepare yourself for when things go wrong. So you shouldn't be overly worried. You prepare yourself. When he trains himself to tolerate these little irritating experiences, you will become habitual, and he will then be able to tolerate things that are far more frustrating. So first, this part, you see, when we talk about cognitive behavior therapy, he's talking about the cognitive behavior, training your mind over time, over the lifetime, slowly, slowly, to be prepared. Not to be sort of suddenly startled. And then he talks about some can withstand great calamities without being stirred up. Some, however, are traumatized, develop a bodily disorder. And nowadays, we call that psychosomatic. So if you're stressed, worried, depressed long term, you can have bodily aches and pains. So I won't go into that, but I've worked with people who have chronic shoulder aches and they can't get rid of it. And then examining the reasons, talking behind with them about it, you'll see there was this trauma stored. 5 years, 10 years, maybe family issues that they can't get rid of it, marital issues and things. And as a result, they've now got bodily pains. They have no idea what that's come from. So, yeah, he talks about these traumas can then develop into a bodily disorder, which is interesting. Let's move on. So he's saying if you think you're strong enough, face great problems.
I think Brother Abu Shama wants to
Oh,
say
carry on,
something.
carry on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go on, Abu Shama.
Abu Shama bhai, I think you are mute.
Salam. Can you hear me?
There you are.
We can.
Can you? All right. Yes. So you mentioned something which is quite interesting there.
It's
so,
a bit echoey, Brother Abu Shama,
Is
and
it?
a bit far.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this any better?
A bit
Yeah,
better.
sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Give me 1 second. I think I know what to do. Okay. Sorry. This should be better, right?
It is better. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So you mentioned that some people have tendency, and that is true because you have people with different sensitivities. They call it now, which is some people the nervous system gets dysregulated.
It's gone quiet a bit again, Abu Shama bhai. Just I don't know if other people can hear it. If other people can hear it, then that's okay.
Come nearer to the mic, please.
Is this better?
Much
Yeah.
better.
Okay. Sorry. I took my hands free off. Right. So they talk about sensitivities these days. So they talk about these nervous system of people are of different types. Especially you got there's a lot of work that's been done, research by Elaine Aron. So she talks about sensitivities. Some people, the nervous system is shaped in a way, and it tends to affect around 10 to 20%. So average figure is about 15%. That their nervous system picks up on any kind of noise, any susceptibilities, and so on. And although in certain circumstances this is detrimental, in other circumstances this is actually beneficial because they are acutely aware, they're attuned to pick up on this. So again, depending on different people in different circumstances, it becomes a detriment if you're in a place where there is a lot of like resentment or something like that. You'll pick up on those kind of signals. Whereas if you're in a place where those picking up those signals is actually crucial, like for example, like in a place where there is danger, those people are the first to actually pick it up. So it has a behavior and survival mechanism as part of it. So it's quite interesting that he's picked up on this very early on. Like you're looking at 1200 years ago, which is fascinating.
Yeah, that's what amazes me.
Oh, that's
Yeah, thank you.
what
Thank
did
you
you
for
say?
that. Right, let's see next slide. Right, so if one finds that he's strong enough to face great problems, which other people would struggle with, then he can proceed and tackle it. If, on the other hand, one realizes that it's too much for his disposition, then one should keep away from them, even if it means they'll miss out on certain pleasures and wishes. So, you must know yourself. If it's going to damage you, don't go into that fight. If you're sure you can win, then tackle it. So he says that this is the last statement is quite interesting. To be deprived of expected pleasures, if this means maintenance of one's soul's tranquility, is far, far better than confronting what one cannot tolerate. So that's quite sort of a streetwise wisdom. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I
Yeah.
stop you, Motiur bhai, there?
Yeah.
Adding to what Brother Abu Shama just said, is just repeated here in the middle paragraph, what you just said,
Yeah.
that in the earlier centuries, the scholars, they were so respectful of people's predisposition, which is in the earlier 19th centuries, the philosophers or psychologists, they tend to ignore and tend to say, oh, anything is possible, you can train up anyway. So they were kind of less aligned with people's predisposition, tried to ignore, and anything is, sky is the limit, anything is possible, that kind of mantra. Whereas now, I think things are coming back to this older education. So what Brother Abu Shama said about Elaine Aron's book, I also read it. It's very new finding, only 20 years ago, and she found that some people, 10 to 20%, will be like very highly sensitive and predisposed. So, like, they have to kind of weigh them around the situation according to their abilities, the psychological abilities, which is nice to see that the earlier scholars, they picked up so much on. Sorry, please carry on.
Yeah. I mean, in the 80s, I remember we had this impression with training, you can do anything. Yeah. So this is where the sort of treatment part starts. How does one regain psychological health when one loses it? So he says that the first part thing is you're never going to have perfect, tranquil health psychologically all the time. You're going to be subjected to anger, fear, distress, and other things. You can, and the point is here again, he's talking about bodily aches and pains. You can go 5 years, 10 years, 15 years without one day sort of suffering from bodily aches and pains, but you can't go 2 weeks without getting anger or moody or sort of upset or gloom or something. So he's putting into perspective what we suffer most. Just as the body can be either treated internally by absence of certain food. So at his time, there weren't paracetamols or amoxicillin. So food would be the way of treating bodily things. So it was special diet. The soul can be treated through internal and external approaches too. One suffering from psychological disturbances can fight his symptoms internally by developing soul thoughts, opposite of what sustains the problem, that neutralize the symptoms and desensitize the provocation. So you think opposite. So there, he's again talking about cognitive behavior. So what agitates you, if you think the opposite, that will actually lessen and neutralize it. And externally, one can listen to advice of another person, what we call therapist now. It's interesting. Maybe at their times, the princes will have an advisor counselor, and that was quite normal in the Islamic world. Nowadays, all football coaches, sports coaches, everyone else have a coach, don't they, to sort of coach you, that would come and agitate the soul and treat abnormality. So I think generally public, we don't do that, but the elites still do. And maybe in the old world, Muslim eras, that was quite common. If you don't do that, it says the psychological symptoms, if you don't deal with it, will become severe, and then you will have bodily problems. This is quite interesting, the last point, because he says, by dealing your problem yourself, you might not get far, but if you use someone else's advice, you're more likely, it's a better attempt. So he talks about that. I think on the next slide, he says, the mind, let's have a look. Yeah, there we are. So I haven't come across this one, the first one. Man in general accepts from others what he does not accept from himself. And this is something to think about. Yeah. Second, one suffering from painful psychological symptoms is so occupied that he can't clearly think how to deal with it, which is, we all know that. So it's for this reason kings and sensible rulers would have special advisors, counselors to keep them calm. away from their anger and rage, and give them sort of assurance when they are fearful or in a state of anxiety. And he says both, it must be emphasized, the treatment internal and external are not mutually exclusive. So it doesn't mean you need to do one and not the other. You can do both, he's saying. So yeah, so this is like, when we talk about counseling and therapists nowadays, especially in our community, even me going back, say 20 years ago, and someone suggested go for counseling, and I said, what nonsense. So here we've got Al-Balkhi talking about counseling 1200 years ago, and he's giving reasons why it's better, because we'll accept advice of others over the advice of ourselves. Okay, so next one. Now he talks about the different. He's the first to categorize mental health disorders. So he first generally talks about in his book about the attributes of human mind. So some are praiseworthy. He talks about intellect, memory, comprehension. And the blameworthy things is talk about greed, hatred, envy, and some are transitory. So, sometimes you might feel greed or envious, and it goes away, comes back, goes away. So that's what he means by transitory. These blameworthy attributes are not always there in you. If they're always there, that would be a problem, actually. There are other emotional states he's talk about. So this is more fixed, permanent. And then he talks about emotional states, anger, fear, and similar symptoms. And the worst of the harmful emotions are anxiety. And from it talks about it is the root of, it is the root with the rest its branches. So anxiety is the worst, and anger. It talks about anger, anxiety is generated from distress. So when you're really distressed, then the next thing happens, you get angry. And second most negative symptom of the soul is terror. When you are exposed to a fearful situation, excessive fear can lead to terror and panic. So, and the third, he talks about sadness and depression and melancholy. It affects a person due to loss of something he likes or loves, possibly death of a person, losing wealth, or something like this results. And then this results in sadness and grief. The fourth symptom is obsession. This is an interesting one, obsession. It's persistent in the human heart, causes repetitive, repulsive, or immoral thoughts that results in apprehension and unhappiness, to the extent that one obsessed may lose his ability to enjoy the pleasures of the body and the soul. So, because if one person becomes so obsessed, then they forget the needs of the body and the soul, and that's very harmful, he talks about. So these are the four things: fear, anger, distress, sadness, and obsessions. Let's go to the next one. So these four symptoms of the soul have a connection with the workings of the body, which, when aggravated, can cause physical illness and bodily harm. And then he talks about waswasa, in Islamic terminology, they call it waswas, or the suggested whispers of the soul, where when we get to bed, we try to sleep, wake up next morning, but suddenly thoughts keep on coming and you're thinking about the same thing. And it says, I've thought about that 50 times, 100 times, given it half an hour, 2 hours, but you can't get rid of that thought. So this keeps on coming back. That's what he means about the obsession here. So he's classified, he was the first person to classify mental health in different branches. And now the rest of the book talks about how do you get rid of anger one after another? So he's talking about some people are naturally angry. They're intolerant, hot-tempered. If you are intolerant and hot-tempered, if you're a judge or a person in power, you might decide things, you might execute people, prison people, and then you'll feel guilty. So how should you do with this is you should appoint a person who's nice and natured, who is much more balanced, will give you advice and remind you that if you take revenge now, you'll be forever guilty and it will be a sin. And if you forgive them, you're going to have rewards. So this is all sort of good advice, cognitive behavior. So always, if he's advising that a man of power should have a wise person next to him just to counsel him. So this is external mode of helping with your anger. Internally, um, he's saying first, when anger comes in, don't let it build up. Nip it in the bud. Otherwise, you can't tolerate it afterwards. So first, try to stop it immediately. Have I gone too far?
Motiur bhai,
Yeah.
we come to a 30-minute point now.
All right. Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
but we got time. We can,
okay.
it's really good discussion, so we can take some more time, 10, 15 minutes
Okay.
if you want.
Thank you. Yep.
How many slides do you think you have left?
I don't think I'll go a bit because now you've got an idea of the important part was to relay the content of the book.
Okay.
So now I can move on a bit faster because
Okay. Yeah, if you
sure
can
you
wrap
have
up in 10 minutes, I think
yeah,
there is plenty of discussion people would be
lovely. It'd be
like to
nice, yeah,
participate.
yeah. And I'd like it's a very short book, really, a couple of hours read. So I would like all listeners to read the book and get a taste for it. It is a masterpiece, one of the earliest. So let's move into yeah. So basically, this is one way of dealing about anger is trying to persuade yourself about the akhirat as a Muslim. Get a wise counselor to say you'll feel guilty. Um, so next one is tranquilizing fear. How do you deal with fear? And he describes fight or flight mode. I inserted that bit, but the rest of the writing is his. There are those whose disposition is so reactive that they may become stunned and can't think anymore. And then he talks about this also cognitive side. Most of the things that you fear will never actually harm you. And most of the terror comes from the anticipation of terror itself rather than the terror. So how do you deal with it? You tell yourself, don't be spineless, be brave, you're a man up and deal with it. And this is what the modern psychologists do. To get rid of fear, modern psychologists, they expose slowly to fear, and then eventually it becomes normal. You won't be. That's what they do with spiders and things. So if you first come near it, you're terrified, then slowly, this is gone. Um, Correct distorted thoughts through evidence-based reasoning. So, when thinking about something in the dark, that's not really rational. Um, Social support, talk to people, that will help you. Spiritual grounding talks about that. And also says there's mind-body relation, healthy routine, sleep, diet, movement. He believes that will stabilize emotional reactivity. Let's move on to the next one. Sadness. I quite like the very first thing is depression is an acute form, is like a blazing coal fire, while sadness is what remains after the fire has subsided. Um, this is, I really just, if you think of that statement, sadness is directed towards the past, while fear is towards the future. Um, It talks about reactive sadness, short-term, triggered by life events, genetic, because some people are predisposed to certain sadness. Chronic, if you leave it, has to be, then it gets worse. So treatment is strengthening positive thoughts over negative thoughts, social support. Don't be isolated. If you are sad and depressed and if you're isolated, that's really bad. Reduce isolation, engage into meaningful things so you get your motivation back, something that means to you. Gradually change rather than sudden shifts. And then again, he talks about healthy routines, diet, movement. Okay. This one again is talking about whispers of the soul and repetitive thoughts. And these are the really important things, avoiding loneliness. If you're lonely and by yourself, your thoughts, whispers, was, they'll come and haunt you. Keep active. This last statement was really, I like that. None should seek solitude except the three people: rulers, scholars, and worshippers. Rulers who need time to reflect on how the nation is doing, scholars to research and think and evaluate about their learning, as worshippers doing etika for something. Otherwise, the lone person is a devil. There's an Arabic saying, I haven't quoted the Arabic part, but this is what it translates to. The lone person is a shaitan. So that's interesting.
The hadith of the Prophet says, Al-Ghanima, that the sheep,
Yeah,
the sheep
yeah.
is the prey of,
Lone
you know
sheep.
what, the lone sheep is
Yeah,
the prey
yeah.
of the wolf.
Yeah. So that's also in the Sunnah. Not to be away by yourself. You'll be more likely to be nicked off by the wolf. And then this is what I looked into his book. There's much more. So these are the important dichotomies, the two opposite sides. You got the physical, spiritual, you got the mind, and you got the body. Both affect each other. Internal, external causes, they affect each other. Even the medicine, there's also internal medicine, external medicine. Then you got psychological therapies. The talk nowadays we call, I think NHS calls it now talking therapies, if I'm right, versus medicine and diet. So before my experience, generally offhand experience, before 2000s, if you felt depressed, straight onto the tablets, some sort of a pill somewhere. Nowadays, they don't want to get you on the tablets. They want you to talk to someone. They call it talking therapies. And this is what he was advocating, Al-Balkhi, 1200 years ago. Have I got any more slides? Yeah. So Balki pioneer, way ahead of his time. This is the book we've been talking about. He diagnosed stress, depression, fear, anxiety, phobias, OCDs. He talked about cognitive CBT, which is just coming recently in the last maybe 40 years, 1200 years ago. Holistic medicine. Yeah, so if you think about what he's done, I liked few quotes because he was also very well known at this time as a person of literature. And so I thought, let's find few quotes from him, because if this person is known in the literary circles, you should quote him. And these are the three quotes I've found. If someone praises you for what is not in you, then remember, you can't trust him, because he will blame you for what is not in you also. So if he's giving false praises, he might give you false blames. So that's one quote. Religion is the greatest of philosophies. Therefore, a man cannot be philosopher until he becomes a worshipper. So he's saying you can't be a philosopher unless you practice your religion. And the greatest medicine is knowledge. I think that was the end. So there we are.
Thank you so much, Motiur Bhai. I think it was such a beautiful presentation, and I think probably like me, everybody was listening to it like a spellbound. And yeah, I guess everybody has much to share. Brother Abu Shama already shared, Ibrahim Bhai shared, Kahar Bhai is there. So the floor is open. If anybody has any specific questions, I will probably let them to come first. If you have a question, please raise hand. If no question, then please feel free to contribute. Because end of the day, this is kind of a literary sessions. We are here to get together and chat and learn from each other. So the floor is to everyone. Please feel free either to raise hand or just unmute and speak. I'll just wait a couple of seconds. I'm sure there are a few things people like to share.
I'll just say what I was.
Yes, go on, Ibrahim.
I'll just say what I was thinking so fast, but I couldn't get it out of my mouth. But I had some moments to catch up. So the hadith of the Prophet is فَعَلَيْكَ بِالْجَمَاعَةِ. So stay with the congregation. فَإِنَّمَا يَأْكُلُ الذِّئْبُ الْقَسِيَّةَ. For indeed the lone sheep is the prey of the wolf. So stay with the congregation, otherwise you'll be overcome. If you're alone in your thinking, you'll be prey to the wolf.
Jazakallah. Thank you for that. There you are.
That's a really interesting hadith.
Yeah. Well, I've got Kahar Bhai there. Hopefully there we are. We'd like to have your thoughts.
Cool. Jazakallah khairan, Motiur Bhai. Don't really have much question. Well, not a comment to ask. I've not read the book, and I think the issue around mental health is quite large. But I think I'll throw a question that normally everybody asks, and I think you kind of briefly touched upon at the beginning in terms of describing mental health and how, often it's reference to like jinn possession and so on, where, I think in our communities, perhaps that's the first kind of direction we go to. If any mental health issues, we say, okay, perhaps something to do with, and jinns and so on. But is there any reference in his book, in his works? And is there any solutions in terms of ruqya, or does he mention those kind of things? Or is it purely...
Yeah. So this one was quite interesting. So he's talking about sort of... I don't think he would say there's no such thing as jinn possession and no such thing as ruqya. So he's talking about anger, the emotional issues, anger, depression, fear, obsession, these sort of things. And he's trying to say, okay, jinn possession, maybe we can't help it. You'll need to go to a sheikh. But he's actually, somewhere in this book I read, he was to tell the readers here, how could you, this is like a self-help book. How could you help yourself? And then they say, yeah, you can either do it internally by doing this, you can do it externally by doing this, or you can find a wise person, go and have counseling from there. So I think the mental health, the other, what they call it, the psychotic episodes, he probably deliberately left that out. So not in this book, he's not talking about it. But since it's 60 books, I'm sure he would have said something there. But I don't think he's sort of saying there's no jinn possession and ruqya, but he's basically saying, let's leave that subject and let's deal with the others that we can deal with it. That's how I see it. But very interesting. Thank you, Abdul Karim.
No,
So
Jazakallah khair.
to raise that.
I think I don't know if you can, maybe if anybody else knows, but I think if I'm correct, there was some stats out with the biggest death is loneliness. I don't know if it's recent, but I'm sure I've heard this probably in the last few years. And the biggest death is caused by loneliness. So the fact that he's on his book mentioned about, go and speak to somebody, seek support, talk to people about it, and I think one of the main points perhaps which you mentioned just a few minutes ago is that the book is probably around self-help. How can you help yourself? If you see yourself in a situation like this, he kind of, I think, signposts you certain things that perhaps you can do. So that's really good that's come out of it. So Jazakallah khair.
Thank you. It's a good point. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Kahabai. We got Brother Kalam joined. Kalam, would love to hear your thought as well, if you have.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for giving me. Can you hear me?
We can.
Walaikum salam.
First of all, Jazakallah, Brother Motiur Bhai. It's really useful topic and subject and book for us. And obviously, you have given a lot of energy and a lot of effort to read this book here and summarize these books. We appreciate that. So it's really important point you talk about the psychological aspect and bodily aspect of human affect and impact each other. So the question would be, which, let's say, bodily pain. So when you are bodily, when you feel pain, your psychology will be impacted, of course. Your mental health will be impacted. Same times when you are mentally not well, your body will be impacted. I came across a statement not long ago. It's, somewhere I heard that if not all, almost all the disease, all the ailment are induced, originated from emotional, emotion, negative emotion, in other words. Of course, not all the illness. For example, if something is broken, if your bone is broken, it's not emotionally induced. But many modern diseases, cancer, and even arthritis, this sort of disease are originated from emotion, or in other words, psychological aspect. So I think this, my question would be to you, which one has got bigger impact? This is the first question. First, I'd like to hear your thought and audience thought on that. And the other point you talk about, what are the solution to all these issues that we face? The solution, spiritual solution, I think, is the best solution. First, if we go back to Quran says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. every human is created with honor. So when Allah created human, there was no fear to human. There was no depression to his soul. It was like, of course, pure, and there was no issue. But the time we are born into this world, I think all this negative emotion and negativity and all these psychological things come up from the way we are taught, we are raised. It coming from probably from our neighbor, from our parents, from our culture. It's, like the way, if someone born in Bangladesh, he will learn Bengali. Someone born in England, he will naturally he will learn English. So that's how this psychological illness or emotion come to us. And so here I like to kind of disagree on the point, saying that it is not something we can get rid of by training. Of course, we are by born we were very powerful, because our Allah said in Quran, وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ, means he is closer to us than our jugular vein, than our vein, so he's so close. So when he's so close, how can we not be powerful? He's kulli shay'in qadir. So my question, or the other point I'd like to say is that not something we can get rid of, or we can overcome by connecting with Quran, by connecting with Allah, by connecting with kulli shay'in qadir. So those are the things. If anything else comes up, of course I'll talk. Thank you. Jazakallah.
And thank you for raising these points. And this is what Al-Balkhi is talking about, more or less. The mental hygiene or spiritual hygiene, the spirit, the mind, the affects the body, and basically how do you, before it gets worse, how to get sort of nip it in the bud. How do you, so basically this is, the whole book is about just what you're saying, yes. And then he's saying look, because man has bodily disposition, man has genetic disposition, he will come across problems. And he talks about different people, so he's not saying one single categories. Different people would suffer different things. Some people are more angrier, some people are more greedier. And he says, yes, whole idea, know yourself, clean yourself, purify yourself, just like you need bodily hygiene. You do the mental or spiritual hygiene as well, which you're right. But so he says, I am the first person to write on this subject. So the first book is not like everything, but from our perspective, love, first book written 1200 years ago, when we compare what our doctors and physicians and clinicians are saying now in 2000s, wow, mashallah, this is like, yeah, they're actually mirroring the language of Balki.
Yeah.
So he's not giving all the solutions, but he's saying, yeah, this is the line of inquiry. You build on it. So it is our job. So I'm not a psychologist, but there are other psychologists who know, might be much more appealing, much more deeper. Those who are in that field, they understand it much more from a clinical point of view. So, but thank you. Yeah, this is something. I think we had. Is there Shakir Bhai who raised?
I think Shakir Bhai, he
Yeah.
raised hands. We haven't heard from Shakir actually for some time, so it was nice to hear from Shakir.
Thank you, Motiur Bhai. It's a wonderful book. This morning I was a little bit free. I tried to read a little bit, and it made me interested to read. Probably I'll read later this week. I'm free a little bit of this week. but obviously today's event, probably I didn't have my time to read it fully. I go couple, not couple, probably couple of thoughts coming to my head, and just sharing. I might be wrong, or I might be very, I would say very beginning. Philosophy is not my area of kind of not in my area, I would say. So there is a two thing. One is like obviously it's 1200 years ago, and there was some other scholars from the Islamic world that probably contributed that time of the world. But when I was growing up, or even that I see the community even nowadays, people completely believe on like anything happen, mental health or anything, they goes to the imam or they goes to something. Obviously, I'm not talking about the zin possession or anything. I'm talking about the genuine health issue, mental health. People are becoming, or nowadays probably people are coming for mental health issue from the drugs and other stuff thing. Then going to the directly to the religious what the treatment. And then when I was growing up, I see the same thing. I've never faced that kind of thing, but I see many people are doing this, and the imams and the scholars also, they are entertaining those kind of things. Some way or others, probably for business reasons or other reason. I don't know that. That's why I said they are kind of entertaining on those things. I wonder why those is happening on the arena. Is he purely ignorant of the group of people out there? Another point on the link to that was I wanted to say, how is completely mental health and other things going to worse and becoming worse, people becoming self-harming and people becoming probably more worse? How is like very competent with our beliefs? I believe on taqdeer, and I believe on those kind of things. Worse come worse, I'll have to rely on my belief. And even though I see that people believe in, they are not believing, there seems to be a religious, but still on that kind of situation with a hardship time, they lose the compass of the beliefs. So how does it actually fit in those kind of Islamic belief in education and teaching and knowledge? If you just probably clarify me a little bit on that, would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So you're right. What we had when we were growing up, and especially in our Muslim circles, there is no mental health. All is jinn or magic. But then, so what here our Al-Balkhi, Sheikh Al-Balkhi is saying, look, in chapter 8, he does talk about the Qareen. In the Quran, there is, with every soul, there is a jinn attached, which is known as the Qareen. You'll see in few ayats of the Quran, he's a companion, a shaitan companion or jinn companion to every human being. So everyone has a Qareen. So even there's a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, I can't quote it in Arabic from my top of mind. They asked him, do you have a shaitan? And he says, yes, I have one. I have converted him into Islam. So, and then the sheikhs would say in the old classic Islamic periods, they say, when you fight your nafs, the shaitan attached to your nafs become thin and weak. So it does give you little tiny suggestions, but it doesn't have the strength to overpower you. So there are, I mean, as Muslim scholars, he does acknowledge there are jinns, there is magic also in the Quran acknowledges magic. So there is people can be sick to sihr, they can be sick to shaitan or jinn possession. But one side we completely lost. So, maybe when we were growing up, someone lost all their wealth, they became seriously depressed or had a tragic accident, have trauma, and no one talks about how to deal with trauma, loss, grief, that sort of thing, or anxiety. So this is something which is, wow, 1200 years ago, we had a tradition there and we completely lost it. But yeah, so we've just become on one fringe, just about sihr and magic in our contemporary ulama or the Islamic circle. So that is why this book is quite interesting. So yes, Shakir bhai, thank you for mentioning that as well. That's my observation. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really good point. Where do we stand? And usually, like, the societies become split, like how Brother Shakir mentioned, that people tend to kind of fall onto, oh, like, let's go to the Imam and they will solve. We'd like to hear from Brother Abu Shama. Please go ahead, Abu Shama bhai.
Assalamu alaikum, jazakallah khair. So many things to actually unpack in this book. I did read it, but now I've forgotten. It's been some time. So
Please take your time.
No,
We'd like to hear from you.
no, so I have forgotten. Yeah. So, but I do remember that he talks about. So one of the things that I remember. So this idea Brother Motiur was talking about talking therapies and so on. The idea of talking therapies, obviously, it just came in the 19th century. Can you hear me?
We
Yeah,
can.
yeah. Slightly faint. Come closer and speak while you speak.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me still?
Yeah, we can. We can.
Hello?
We can hear you.
We
Maybe
hear
you
you.
cannot
Okay.
hear us.
Oh, yeah, I can. I think it just froze. So
Okay.
one of the things that he was talking about is that recently we had the whole talking therapies come through, and it's fascinating because before that, Brother Mathur Bhai was talking about that they used to lobotomize people, and if anybody doesn't know what lobotomy is basically they used to drill the prefrontal cortex and take parts of the brain out. I mean, like the, completely, almost like crippling people. And then you had this other idea where talking therapy started taking shape, especially when psychiatric intervention, where people were given a lot of lithium. I think it's lithium. I think lithium is. I think it's lithium, right? So where they give the tablets and it basically makes you zombified.
It's
So it
an
actually
acting
numbs your
gas.
feeling. It numbs your feeling like Prozac. I think I was talking about the ingredient itself. What it does is it numbs your feeling. It numbs you to life. And so this idea of talking therapies came about, which is like, let's talk about our feelings. Let's analyze what's going on. And especially this is quite interesting because he talks about, if you think about like Islam has a framework, and within that framework, if people were to apply Islam in its rudimentary and almost like in a holistic way, you will find that people can actually just by surrounding themselves within the framework of Islamic interaction, dhikr, prayers, and so on. It provides a kind of barrier, and then you have the illnesses, which is like illnesses are illnesses. So his idea of examining your thoughts, the idea of going to people and talking to them, the idea of the speaking to the wise man, because the wise man is going to be someone. In Islam you have this idea that if you are amongst one person and he sort of like looks over there, then this is a private conversation, you don't speak to other people. So now if you look at what talking therapies are, in talking therapy, one of the three tenets of talking therapy, like Carl Rogers actually mentions this, right? So you give them unconditional positive regard, which means that you regard them as a human beings. He came up with this idea is because this was after the war. People who suffered a lot, they would not regard them. They would see themselves in a very negative light. So if he gave regard to them, that I will not see you as lesser of a human being. I will not be judgmental. So if you say something, I will judge you. Like, some people, like, if you say something like, oh, I was really upset by that, and imagine your therapist or the brother you're speaking to, you go like he rolls his eyes or something like that. Like, you mean you were scared about this? So he minimizes that thing. So that's judgmental. So his theory was unconditional positive regard. this idea of not judgmental, creating a safe space for someone to speak and not going anywhere. And this idea that in medicine, you have this idea that in medicine that you do not, even doctors don't treat themselves, because the problem is you have lots of cognitive biases and you have all these things. You will find the problem and you would misdiagnose yourself. And this is why self-diagnosis is one of the biggest um, blunders, right? Which we have been inflicted, especially with the internet, because lots of people go to the doctors and say, "I have all of these symptoms. Now you treat me." And if the doctor doesn't give them that, he goes like, but I've self-diagnosed myself, and self-diagnosis is very, very harmful. And so this idea within the Sunnah is that the idea of mirroring, that your brother acts as a mirror, right? You go to the mirror, and then they will mirror what's going on. And so this other thing. Now, in there, if you go to a person who's wise and whose judgment you accept, and Allah also blesses these people with farasa, so they can see things in your nature that you don't know. Allah opens this up. This is a gift. So and the other thing is, if you are a good person, a righteous person, and certain things are inspired to your nafs, especially in the psychology of the human being, you have that the nafs goes on this elevation, and one of the stations that it goes through is mulhama. So the nafs becomes inspired by the angelic forces and Allah Himself. Like, it can be Rabbani inspirations as well. So these things open people up to certain things, or Allah put something on someone's tongue so that that person can hear. So you got that. Then He talks about rumination, and then He talks about loneliness. And loneliness is an epidemic we've seen. Now, one of the rise of mental health. Sorry, I hope I'm not going too much, right? On the rise of huh?
Carry it. It's
Okay.
nice, interesting.
Okay, so one of the rise of mental health, like we say, like, well, how come mental health suddenly came up? Never in history have people been told to run 100 miles an hour every single day. They have families that the families are not connected. They have no third space. So before, people used to have this third space where they used to be amongst each other. They used to be jovial. Somewhere they have balance between work is work, this is thing. So there is this balance. This balance is not there. Then you have the urban structures that are everywhere. So nature, they're not in nature. There is so many factors where the human being is so stripped away from who they are in essence, where, and so therefore the soul is in this kind of, like, almost like a prison. This world has become like a prison. And then there is another hadith that I want to bring in, which is like Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam talks about fitan. He doesn't talk about sins. A lot of people think it's sins, and the hadith goes like this, right? Trials and tribulation will be presented to the heart like a reed mat, woven stick by stick. Any heart that is afflicted by this will have a black mark in it, but any heart that rejects it will have a white mark put in it. Now, often people used to think this is just sins are causing fitan. No, it doesn't say that. It means tribulation. Some people are so badly abused, some people are mocked, some people are bullied, and so on. Those things put a black spot on people's heart. Those knots are very, very hard to take out. And then what happens is, if they are in the company, and this is why Muslim therapists are very, very important, because the secular therapists, they can have this talking therapy, but without the framework of Islam. So this idea of, you know what, this happened, okay, it happened, you can't do anything, but how could you unpack that? So now if you bring the names of Allah as a schema, as a representation of what happened, you go, okay, there are these things that happen. And then you bring out the thing with Musa alayhi salam, that when Musa alayhi salam went through all of this tribulation, and in the Quran, Allah says, we have selected you for ourselves. Means that whatever happened so that you would be in a position for what is to come after. So there is this kind of acceptance and so on. So all of these things we need to bring into the thing. And so he's touching on all of this stuff, right? So he's touching on this stuff, and it's I think it's so pioneering and so advanced. But at the same time, you can see where he got it from, because he got it actually from the Deen, right? He actually got it from the Deen. And I feel like a lot of people that especially the creative people, they go through certain things, and why he might have brought it out is perhaps he went through a lot of this himself, and therefore he's able to write from the other side.
Thank you. Abu Shama, that's really interesting, actually. Yeah. So this is going back and how we, because from just one book and from his lifetime, what he's read, who he's associated with, um, there is lots of input from different people, and it's our Islamic culture, our literature, our religion. And the last statements is you can't be a philosopher. So, at their time, they're translating philosophy into the Arabic and Islamic cultures. And you can't be a philosopher, he says, unless you're a worshipper. So, the deen and Islam and the Islamic heritage is so important. You can sort of gather from these statements. So, thank you for doing that. So, we've just somehow had disconnect between our past and we've got therapists now, but we need to reconnect, rebuild, and see from where we are. And there are brothers, sisters from different circles, different backgrounds trying, and we're moving in the right direction, especially in the West. Uh, talking just before 2000s, in the 80s and 90s, I don't think they looked into emotional side. It was hard medical still drilling into the skull. Well, that stopped, say, 100 years ago, but still heavy medication that sedates the mind. Um, that's how they sort of managed illness, mental health. So there are different other ways that we can actually look in and build onto that, going back to our traditions. So thank you very much.
Yeah, Alhamdulillah. Thank you, Abu Shama Bhai as well, and Motiur Bhai. Such a beautiful discussion, and Alhamdulillah, we recorded it. So I will share in the group, and I think other brothers and sisters who couldn't participate today will really benefit from this discussion. Um, just last few minutes, we just got one message from Sister Josna Nusrat. Yeah, she's at work. I see patients. So we'll read out. At work, I see patients being referred to talking therapy sessions, feeling good from it, and then wanting to do more of them. That's true. That's true. And I think it's been really beautiful, and today we got Alhamdulillah, we managed to hear from everyone. So that was a really good participation, and that one actually makes us as a book club successful two ways. A is bringing the old gem, old pearl of wisdom back, and motivating us that these things has been there. Abu Shama Bhai, please go ahead.
Sorry, one last thing. I really wanted to say
Definitely.
something on his very modern approach. And I was trying to find the actual quote. Motiur, you probably know where it is, right? He mentions, like, your soul goes through all of these ups and downs. This is the nature of this world, right? Then the nature of this world is not perfect, and so you go through ups and downs and so on. And he says you should have, like, like in the West we have this idea that we have a swear jar, right, where when we swear something we put like something in there. He has the opposite. He says you should have a jar, not necessarily a jar, a bag, um, where whenever you hear something good about you, somebody says, because the thing is, when someone gives you a feedback, and if it's not like, it's not the kind of feedback that's deceptive, which is like, then getting something out of it. But if it's a feedback that someone says, mashallah, that's really good, or something, they praise you for something that Allah has given you, write those things down, put them in a jar. Whenever you're feeling down, take that out, look at them, and rejuvenate yourself, because those are the sustenance of your soul.
There's a bank, it's a safety bank where you put your positive thoughts, feelings, and praise for a rainy. He does say that, actually.
Yeah, I couldn't find it, and I'm like looking for it.
Did he say that in this book?
Because he did.
Exactly. Yeah. That statement, I forgot this guy. Brother Abu Shama, I was discussing with this famous modern day, he's a speaker, not a writer, but very famous. I forgot his name. And he was giving that your he was exactly giving that advice, happiness jar, like write down whenever someone praises you or writes you an email, put them, and whenever you're feeling sad, take it out. I forgot his name. He's very popular in US.
Brother Murshid, a lot of these things that, you know, I've been in this world of self-development for over a decade. And when I first started, I kept on seeing all these amazing things that people said. And then when you start reading our heritage, you'll find that a lot of this stuff they took from Mullah Nasruddin, and so on. Like there's this really beautiful one that they will often mention, that they will say, like, you know, I saw a man. So there was a man who was looking for his keys, and he's fumbling around trying to find where his keys are. It's in the dark. Sorry, he's fumbling around. Another man comes out and he says, "Where did you lose it? What were you doing?" He goes, "I'm looking for my keys." And so they both looked. After a while, they couldn't find it, and they said, "Can I ask you a question? Where did you lose your keys?" He goes, "Inside the house." He goes, "Why are you looking here?" He goes, "Because the light is on." Sometimes we're looking for something in the wrong place. Now, I thought that was such an profound. This is Mullah Nasruddin's story. They take it and they don't quote it. They don't quote it. And same with Rumi. They take lots of stuff from him and they do not quote it. Does that make sense? So I think if you go back to our thing, because we have such a deep history and heritage, you will find this in our books.
Yeah, but that is amazing. To be honest, that story of the bag, or he used jar, exactly the same word, but exactly as it is, nothing different. Just instead of a sack, he used the jar. And he's very famous in America, and exactly same, subhanallah. So, alhamdulillah, it is good to reconnect. And stories like this, books like this, especially this, our book club, we have a purpose to reconnect to our root, our heritage, and reignite the critical thinking mind of Muslims. Unfortunately, if you know, like Brother Shakir has mentioned, that why people went the other way, or Brother Kahar also touched upon it, and I think is one of the major reason is the collapse of ability to critical think and connect. That's why people take a simple route, like, oh, it's genes, because you don't have to think much, because then you can just blame something else and go to a mullah and get some water or some tabiz. And the collapse of this critical thinking among the Muslim community, that probably one of the major reasons that why we lost our heritage, our wisdoms, and discussions like this, books like this. Thank you so much to Motiur Bhai and all those who participated. Bring backs and shed some lights and encourage us to kind of carry on this road. So, Motiur Bhai, I would let you to have the final words, and with those, inshallah, we'll finish our again, just this is the last session for this summer. We'll have a short break in August, and then we will reconvene in September, inshallah. And again, in third Mondays of September, inshallah. So Motiur Bhai, with your last words, inshallah, we can conclude our today's session.
Thank you. Unless any brothers or sisters have any thoughts, it's been a delightful book, actually, for me to read, present. I enjoyed the discussion here. I think it seems that you have enjoyed the discussion here as well. So thank you for that. And inshallah, in the future, we will have similar topics, discuss about other writers. Meanwhile, thank you for listening. Be safe, and we see you soon in another session somewhere. Fi amanillah. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Jazakallah,
Jazakallah, everyone.